Well, the UK has confirmed its first Omicron death as cases of the variant there passed the 3,000 mark. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the idea that Omicron is mild now needs to be set aside. He says the UK's best weapon is boosters, but Johnson is not ruling out tighter restrictions should cases rise even higher. Our UK correspondent, Olly Barratt, is with the latest now, joining us live from London. So, Olly, the UK recording one death as a result of the Omicron variant. Any details on this patient's age, comorbidities, etc.?
No, and indeed, the government is actually saying that this is a death of a person who had tested positive for Omicron COVID-19. It is not saying that this is necessarily a death that was because that person died from Omicron COVID-19. So there's really not much that we do know about that particular person, whether they died from something else with COVID, whether they had other comorbidities. We're just not clear at this point. We've also heard from the government today that 10 people have been hospitalised with Omicron, the Omicron strain of COVID-19. And the update in terms of confirmed cases of Omicron, we're up to nearly 5,000 now, but the Health Secretary Sajid Javid has just been speaking in the Commons, and he says that experts believe that the daily infection number at the moment of Omicron cases is probably around 200,000.
Wow. Yeah. Yet, despite that lack of information around this person who did die, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson making sweeping statements about this not necessarily being a mild bout of COVID-19. So is anything that he's saying based on scientific research?
What he's really saying is not that this might not be a variant that is milder than previous variants. He's saying that it's spreading so quickly that even if it is milder, we're still going to see quite a large amount of hospitalizations just because of the numbers that we're talking about, because of the speed of the spread of this variant. UK officials also believe that the data coming in from South Africa is absolutely crucial and is going to be very helpful, but they also point out there are different demographics between the two countries, a younger population in South Africa, you have a higher proportion of people vaccinated here. So they say that the comparisons only go so far when it comes to what we know about the variant up to this point. And Boris Johnson really just saying that while there is still some uncertainty about Omicron and exactly what its impacts are going to be, then he believes that the safest thing is to have some slightly stricter measures in place and really roll out the booster jabs as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so what's your hospitalizations looking like, and how concerned is government about more and more people being admitted despite being fully vaccinated?
Yeah, very concerned indeed, and that goes back to that idea of just how quickly this variant is spreading. Sajid Javid saying that it's spreading much more quickly than any previous variant of COVID-19 throughout this pandemic. And again, that just means that even if it's only a very small amount of people who do become requiring hospitalisation, you know, a small proportion of a very, very large number is going to cause strain on the health service. At the moment, hospitalisations are pretty flat, actually. Over the last 7 days, we've only seen a 5% rise in hospitalisations compared to the 7 days before that. But the Health Secretary stressing what we've heard so often through this pandemic, that there will be a lag. And so that large number of cases we see today will lead to hospitalisations in the days and weeks ahead. Deaths actually continue to drop a little bit lower in the UK. Again, we see that lag, so it may well be that deaths start to tick up. This is a very vaccinated population, but UK officials do believe that it's those boosters that are going to be absolutely critical in keeping as many people as safe as possible.
Yeah, and that's why Prime Minister Boris Johnson launched that booster plan today, obviously aimed at giving people more protection against the Omicron variant. How did it go?
Well, there have been people queuing today at walk-in centres that are now available to them earlier than would otherwise have been the case. There have been some problems with the amount of people turning up at some of those sites and having to wait long hours to get a jab. There's also been a lack of clarity about exactly what the government's target is here. Boris Johnson talked about everyone of adult age being able to have their booster jab by the end of the year, and that would mean around 1 million people would need to be boosted each day. Well, the Health Secretary today has been saying it's going to be the chance of an offer of a vaccine by the end of the year, which might mean that some people actually get the vaccination in their arm in January or February of next year. The highest we've seen during the pandemic so far in terms of vaccinations has been 844,000 jabs in one day. Well, to hit the government's targets now, they need to get up over 1 million per day and get there very, very quickly indeed. It's a very ambitious target, and I think even senior government officials accept that they may not hit it. They do just want to set it as high as possible, that target, so they can get as many people protected.
Yeah, and then, Olly, let's talk about this. We're just seeing it online on the Mail Online, which is a UK-based website, news website, saying that the red list will be scrapped as soon as this week. What are you hearing about that?
Well, UK officials will not go on the record and confirm some of the reporting we've seen in South Africa today, that the UK has told South Africa that it is going to be removed from the red list. We cannot get an official to go on the record and confirm that that conversation has taken place. It is certainly the case that Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has been lobbying his fellow ministers and officials to get South Africa and all of the other countries removed from the red list and effectively to scrap that red list and replace it with testing for people who are fully vaccinated. So that may well happen, and it may well happen very soon. Officials did confirm to me today that they still expect those red-listed countries to be reviewed this week. So we should get some news in either direction in the coming days.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, let's shift gears slightly. Boris Johnson's hold on power is looking increasingly tenuous as more allegations emerge about that Christmas party last year and a decorating bill, all under his watch. What's it looking like?
It's a really tricky situation for Boris Johnson for a number of reasons. One is that he's really seeing a growing rebellion in his own party against his leadership. Some of that is related to some of these scandals around Christmas parties and so on. He says he didn't break any rules this time last year, and anyone who did will be disciplined in some way. But when he's imposing tougher measures like more mask mandates, COVID passes for access to nightclubs, and there's talk of tougher restrictions potentially being needed before Christmas, many of Boris Johnson's critics say, look, you are going to struggle to get the British public to comply with those measures if they don't think that you were following your own rules or that your staff were following your own rules when telling the rest of the country to do so this time last year. So for all sorts of reasons, Boris Johnson has had a very difficult week or so. He's certainly trying to put it behind him and encourage people to talk about and think about booster vaccinations, but it's a difficult one when some of the allegations go directly to his own integrity and his own following or lack of the rules that were in place this time last year.
Yeah, he is coming under lots of pressure and scrutiny from the public and, of course, opposition parties, isn't he? Is this going anywhere, though, in terms of his political career? How's it going to be affected?
I think this is all cumulative, and we've seen a number of scandals, a number of missteps recently by Boris Johnson and his administration. And for a lot of the Conservative MPs, who many of them feel that he won them the last election and that they therefore owe him loyalty, they owe him their constituencies, they want to see that stopping. A lot of them say we need a grown-up in number 10 alongside Boris Johnson to help avoid these kinds of mistakes. If he can turn the tide, get on top of this booster campaign, have a few weeks without missteps or scandals or controversies, then it's perfectly possible he can recover some momentum and keep at the helm of the party. But if these mistakes keep on coming, you're going to see more and more Conservative MPs start to say publicly that they question the leadership of Boris Johnson, and it could then be, if those missteps keep adding up and the disquiet in the party continues to grow, that at some point in the not too distant future we could see a leadership challenge.
All right, thank you so much for the update. Appreciate it. Our UK correspondent Olly Barratt, live in London.